And they came over unto the other side of the sea. This is chapter 5, book of Mark, verse 1. And they came over unto the other side of the sea, and into the country of the Gadareans. This is the town of Gadara. Again, I'm not too good at pronouncing these things, but all right. In other words, he went on to the other side of the Sea of Galilee, okay, which was a different country. Okay, so verse 2, and when he was come out of the ship, immediately there met him out of the tombs a man with an unclean spirit. So as soon as they docked the ship, Jesus got out of the ship. Scriptures say immediately there met him. There was a man that came to him out of the tombs with an unclean spirit. And this is basically symbolizes the great mission for which Christ came to the world. He calmed the storm in the sea, and now he would calm the storm in a man's soul. Understand? Let me say that again. This right here symbolizes the mission, the great mission that the reason why that Christ came to this world. He calmed the storm in the sea. Now, we're about to read about it, but now he would calm the storm in a man's soul. There's a sermon there. All right, verse 3. He who had his dwelling, talking about that man with the unclean spirit, the demonic spirit. Okay, he had his dwelling among the tombs. Why? Because the wages of sin is death. Tomb. A tomb is where you put a dead person. So he had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, not even with chains. Because in hindsight, sin and the powers of darkness will yield only to Christ. They're not going to yield to anything else. Sin and the powers of darkness, in other words, the demons, the Satan, those two combined will yield to no man or no thing except to Christ and what he did at the cross on our behalf. And see, this rules out humanistic psychology and anything else that it's instituted by man in order to address this problem. Okay, so we're going to start again. Who had his dwelling among the tombs, and no man could bind him, no, not even with chains. Verse 4. Because that he had been often bound with fetters and chains, and the chains had been plucked asunder by him, and the fetters broken in pieces. In other words, he had superhuman strength, or a form of superhuman strength of those days, and even still, because he had the spirit of had the demonic extra oomph to give him a little bit more power than the regular human strength. Because it says right here, he plucked away chains and broken fetters. I guess that's the things that hold him down. So neither could any man tame him. Once again, I mean, this reinforces the great truth that Christ and the cross alone are the only answer. Verse 5, and always, night and day, this right here is talking about there is no peace for those who do not know the Lord. If you don't know the Lord, you will not have peace. You can have a false sense of peace, but that will wear off quickly, and you'll quickly realize that you didn't really have true peace. So verse 5, and always, night and day, he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. And this is a symbolic picture which takes place with all with all unredeemed in the spiritual. Okay, and always night and day he was in the mountains and in the tombs, crying and cutting himself with stones. And when he saw Jesus from afar off, he quickly ran and worshipped him, because the demon spirit that was in him, the demon spirit recognized him. The demonic spirit recognized who the Son of God was, or the Son of Man, the same person, Jesus. They recognized him. They knew exactly who he was. As soon as they saw him, they ran towards him and worshipped him. Even all demonic spirits and Satan himself were made to pay homage to God, the Son, Jesus Christ, God the Son. And Satan and all of his minions, all of the kingdom of darkness, was defeated at the cross. You could reference that to Colossians chapter 2, verses 14 and 15. Okay, so verse 7, and cried with a loud voice after he came and he ran and worshipped him. The man with the unclean spirit cried with a loud voice and said, What have I to do with you, Jesus, thou Son of the Most High God? This refers to this evil spirit knowing exactly, again, like I said, as to who Jesus was. I adjure thee by God, and that you torment me not. Because there is a certain time that has been appointed by God to which these spirits will be confined to the pit, which is in hell, to the fiery pit. So the spirit, the demon was asking him, I know you are the Son of God. Have you come to torment me? Have you come to mess with me? To I like the word torment. Torment me. Because he knew there was an appointed time for that to happen, and that wasn't that time. Verse 8, for he, talking about Jesus, said unto him, Come out of the man, you unclean spirit. And this constitutes a direct order which the unclean spirit must obey. Verse 9, and he, talking about Jesus, asked him, What is your name? So Jesus said unto him, Come out of the man, you unclean spirit, and what is your name? And he answered Jesus, saying, My name is Legion, for we are many. Now the unclean spirit that was talking was obviously the head demon, I guess, in charge of the rest of them. But there were many in him dwelling in this man, more than just this one. And verse 10, and he besought him, the man, or the demon, besought Christ much that he would not send them away out of the country. In other words, he begged Christ, he begged Jesus a lot. And he begged him and he said, please don't send me out of this country, because that's where his domain was. And because this area, when you get into it, this area was filled with apostate Jews, and was loved by demonic spirits. And we learn here that demon spirits enjoy places that have little or no mention of Christ. So, verse 11, Now there was there near unto the mountains a great herd of swine feeding. In other words, over off in the distance on the mountains there was a large herd of pigs. Okay. And verse 12, and all the devils, the demons that was in this man, begged him, saying, send us unto the swine, or the pigs, that we may enter into them. See, they could not enter into those pigs without the express permission of Christ. So how much less could they enter into the sheep of Jesus's, of Christ's pasture? Verse 13, and forthwith, in other words, immediately, Jesus gave them leave. It means that he did not command them to do this, but instead gave them permission. He didn't say, hey, you go here. They asked, and he said, yeah, go ahead. Leave this man. Yeah, you can go ahead into the pigs. Because back in those times, and even still, pigs are unclean animals. You can do your own research on that. But so Jesus gave them permission to do so. And the unclean spirits went out and entered into the swine, and the herd ran violently down a steep place and into the sea, and were choked in the sea. And there's a great many of these pigs. It wasn't like 10 or 20. There was a lot. And as soon as the demons possessed these pigs, the pigs went straight into the sea and drowned. Verse 14, and they who fed the swine fled. In other words, the herders, the people that owned the pigs. They fled and told it in the city and in the country. And they went out to see what it was that was done. This is talking about the farmers that owned the pigs. They went out into the town and told everybody what they saw, what had taken place. And so a large crowd followed them back to see what had taken place. Verse 15, and they come to Jesus, and see him who was possessed with the devil, or possessed with demons, and had the legion, sitting and clothed. The clothing was most likely given to the man by the disciples, and in his right hand, and in his right mind. Because the demons was having him howl and scream and do all kinds of crazy stuff. But this man was now sitting. He's clothed. He's in his right mind now, next to Jesus. And the people that saw that were afraid, because they tried everything, trying to get this man to be in his right mind, and they couldn't do it. And now they see that he's been tamed by Jesus. They got scared. But regrettably, they did not let that fear bring them to Christ, but rather just keep them away from him. So verse 16, and they who saw it told them how it befell to him who was possessed with the devil, and also concerning the swine. And they began to pray him. They began to beg Jesus to depart from their coasts. And this is just amazing that they thought more of the pigs that he killed. Well, Jesus didn't kill them. Jesus gave permission to the demons, and the demons ran the pigs off the cliff and died. And there was obviously a bunch of them, probably several hundred or so, that they killed, that they drowned, that the demons drowned. But they blamed it on Jesus. And they thought more of the swine that had been lost, killed, drowned at sea, than they did of the eternal life that which Christ can give them. And so is this, and this scenario, so it is the same with most of the world today. And see, because the loss of the animals, would have been nothing in comparison to what they would have received upon their acceptance of Christ. But they didn't. They told them to leave. Okay. Verse 18, and when Jesus was come into the ship, he who had been possessed with the devil prayed or begged him that he might be, not that he can go with him, that he might be with him. Understandably so. Now 19, howbeit Jesus suffered him not, but said unto him, go to your friends and tell them how great things the Lord has done for you, and has had compassion on you. So Jesus told him 3 things. Number 1, go tell. Number 2, great things which the Lord, go tell. Not just go tell, but go tell about the great things which the Lord has done. And lastly, tell of the compassion. So really it's 2 things built into one. He told them to go tell. Go tell what? Go tell them of 2 things. One being the great things which the Lord has done for him, and tell them about the compassion that the Lord has had for him. Now verse 20, he departed and began to publish in Decapolis. And this was like a region that was east of the Jordan River. And it had like a multiple of towns and cities and whatnot. Okay, so he departed and began to be on his way to this region called Decapolis. And how great things Jesus didn't go this way, but the man that was possessed by demons, he departed and began to publish in Decapolis, and how great things Jesus had done for him. And all men that heard his story, you could even say his testimony, because it's really one and the same. The man that he went out and he started telling everybody and anybody that would listen, and the men that saw his testimony and heard his testimony marveled. Just they were, oh my gosh, they were excited, they were happy, they were in awe, they were in wonder. It goes on and on. And obviously, the ones that marveled, they knew this man beforehand, and so they saw the immediate difference and just blew their minds, and rightly so. And this is really the story of so many people throughout the time. Not just then, but throughout the time, all the way from then, all the way up to now, about the compassion and mercy and grace that Jesus has for so many people. Verse 21, and when Jesus was passed over again by ship unto the other side, back to Capernaum, where they came on the west side, much people gathered unto him, and he was near unto the sea. This means hundreds, probably if not thousands, large numbers of people. They saw him, that he was coming back, and they all started gathering again, and were waiting on him at the shore just to come back to Capernaum. And verse 22, and behold, there cometh one of the rulers of the synagogue, Jairus by name. And each synagogue had several rulers. Just kind of fun fact. So Jairus, yeah. by name. And when he saw him, talking about Jesus, he fell at his feet. Again, this is like a posture of worship. And verse 23, and besought him greatly, begged him greatly, an impassioned plea. So, and besought him greatly, or begged him greatly, saying, my little daughter lies at the point of death. And I pray you, come and lay your hands on her, that she may be healed, and she shall live. And the Greek translation actually says to save her from death. So verse 24, and Jesus went with him, and much people followed him. Talking about Jesus, all the people followed Jesus, and crowded around him. Verse 25, and a certain woman, which had an issue of blood for like 12 years. Which had an issue of blood 12 years. So she had a blood problem, sickness, disease for the length of about 12 years. And it's a female disease, blood disease. And verse 26, and had suffered many things of many physicians. In other words, she suffered a lot of pain at the hands of doctors trying to fix her, and had spent all that she had. And these doctors probably already knew at that point what she had, but they still took their money, took the lady's money to help her, knowing they probably couldn't help her. But they took her money gladly to diagnose her and try to fix her. I'm not saying this with a smile. It's a shame, really. And was nothing bettered, but rather grew worse. So her pain and her suffering never got better, no matter how many times she went to the doctors, no matter how much money she spent going to these doctors, trying to get fixed. The doctors knew that they couldn't fix her, but they kept doing these acts just to get her money. And it didn't get any better. In fact, it got worse over time. So, verse 27, when she had heard of Jesus, in the Greek it actually says the Jesus, distinguishing him from all others, came in the press behind him, in the crowd, the big old crowd that was behind him, and touched his garments. She touched Jesus' garments. Verse 28, for she said, in other words, this refers to her, or meaning that she kept saying it over and over to herself, even if no one else agreed with her, or even possibly to others that was around her. But she said, if I may touch but his clothes, I shall be whole. In other words, she says, if I could just touch a piece of his shirt, a piece of his shawl, a piece of his clothing, Jesus' clothing, if I could just touch a piece of his clothing, I will be healed. I will be made whole. Now that's faith. That is faith. Verse 29, and straightway, or immediately, the fountain of her blood was dried up, and she felt in her body that she was healed of that plague. And Jesus, immediately knowing in himself that virtue or power had gone out of him, he turned around. It says turned him about in the press. In other words, he turned back to the crowd. He turned around when he felt the power go out of him, and said, who touched my clothes? See, at this time, the Holy Spirit didn't seem fit to reveal to him who touched his clothes. So he really didn't know who touched. He just knows someone touched his clothes in a way that the power left him. But it was because of her faith. Hold on, let's keep going. So, verse 31, and his disciples said unto him, to Jesus, you see the multitude thronging you, you see the big crowd all around you, and you say, who touched you? What you mean, who? Now, the verse, this is what the verse says. And his disciples said unto him, you see the multitude thronging you, and you say, who touched me? Just take this in your mind for a second. Jesus turns around to you. There's a large crowd all around, close knit, trying to touch him, trying to get his attention, following him, whatever. And Jesus turns around and asks who touches him. And the disciples are like, everybody touched you. What you mean, who touched you? You got a lot of people here. It's kind of comical almost, the way, like, the disciples didn't understand what he was talking about. And he took them by off guard because they were, what? Anyways, so in verse 32, and he looked round about to see her who had done this thing. Verse 33, but the woman, fearing and trembling, she was scared because she was like, what? I touched his garments, I'm healed. He knew it. He turned around, now he's wanting to know where I'm at. Anyways, she's fearing and trembling, knowing that was done in her, came and fell down before, knowing what was done in her, knowing that she was healed. She came and fell down before him and told him all the truth, told him exactly what happened, why, when, where, how, the whole 9 yards. And this proclaims her now seeking mercy as she had previously sought healing. And it would be granted to her as well. So verse 34, and he said unto her, daughter. He said, daughter. And this is a wonderful thing right here, because verse 25 that we previously read, verse 25 addressed her merely as a certain woman. And now she is called daughter. Not just some certain woman, now she's called daughter, which refers to relationship. And in effect, he made her a member of the family of God. And that right there, that's we should all long for that. I long for it. I desire it. We should all desire that relationship. And she said, and again, just like the man that was lowered down from the roof, he said unto her, daughter, your faith has made you whole. Not just the mere fact, the mere touching of the garment, but the fact that she kept saying, if I could just touch a piece of his clothing, I'll be healed. Daughter, your faith has made you whole. Go in peace. In other words, gain salvation as well as healing. And be whole of your plague. In other words, this plague, it would never return to her. It's gone. Hallelujah. Okay, so verse 35. While he yet spoke, speaking to the women, to the woman, while he was speaking to the woman, there came from the ruler of the synagogue's house a certain one, which said, your daughter is dead. Why troublest thou the master any further? In other words, to sum this up, to make it in today's, so while Jesus was still speaking to the woman, there came somebody from the ruler of the synagogue's house, saying, your daughter's dead, why are you bugging Jesus? Why are you bugging the master about it? Your daughter's already dead. And see, the faith of this certain one that came from the ruler's house, the faith wasn't even high enough to believe that Jesus could even raise from the dead. He just didn't have that much faith at all. 36, verse 36. As soon as Jesus heard the word that was spoken, In other words, he was overhearing what was being said between the person and the ruler of the synagogue. Jesus said unto the ruler of the synagogue, "Be not afraid, only believe." In effect, Jesus said, "Stop fearing it, and be believing. Stop the fear. Believe." 37. And he suffered no man to follow him. He told no man to follow him, except for Simon Peter, James, and John, the brother of James. Jesus only took these 3 disciples with him to the home of Jairus, the ruler of the synagogue. Okay, so verse 38, and he came to the house of the ruler of the synagogue, and seeing the tumult and them who wept and wailed greatly. So back in those days, might happen even in today's world, I guess, amongst the rich people. But these days, that when someone was dying, when someone was dead, there were people that were literally hired, given some type of currency, to come to that house, come to the funeral, whatever, to mourn that individual's death. They'd be out there wailing and crying and making all these sobbing noises and stuff. Back in those days, people paid for people to come and do that, and which was a custom back in those days. Could be today too, some places, I don't know, but I just find that really strange. Anyways, so Jesus saw this going on, saw the group of people, and saw them making all the commotion. And when Jesus was come in, when Jesus went into the house of Jairus, he said unto them, to those people that was mourning, why do you make this scene and weep? Why are you here making, it says, this a dough and weep? Why, he's basically saying, why are you here weeping and mourning? The damsel, talking about the daughter, the girl, is not dead, but she sleeps. See, and see right here, this does not mean that the girl was actually not dead. It's not what it's saying. It did not mean that she was actually not dead, but that the child was not dead to stay dead. Okay. Um, 40, and they, talking about the paid mourners, laughed him to scorn. They were laughing. They were like, man, you just said she's not dead. We seen her. We saw her. She's dead. What are you talking about? She's not dead. And they're laughing and scorning him and mocking him and ridiculing him. But when he had put them all out, in other words, demanded that they leave the house, Jesus took the father and the mother of the damsel, of the girl, and them who were with him, which is Peter, James, and John, and entered in where the damsel was laying. "41, and he took the damsel by the hand." Jesus took the girl by the hand, and said unto her, Talitha. And Jesus took the damsel by the hand and said unto her, Talitha cumi, Talitha cumi, cumi, which is, being interpreted, damsel, I say unto you, arise. And see, this right here was spoken in the Aramaic tongue, which is the same tongue that was used concerning Jesus' words on the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? as the original language was reported in these two cases, quite possibly they relate to each other as Jesus defeated death at the home of Jairus here when he told the girl to wake up, to arise. It could be related to the same when Jesus defeated death at Calvary. Verse 42, and straightway or immediately the damsel arose and walked, and she was of the age of 12 years. So she was a 12-year-old girl. So when she was dead, Jesus walked in, grabbed her hand, told her, damsel, I say unto you, arise. And immediately the 12-year-old girl, rose up and walked. And they were astonished with a great astonishment. Now the scriptures only record, fun fact, the scriptures only record 3 people being raised from the dead by Christ. But there is another, But Augustine says that he raised many more. So, what I'm saying is Jesus has done and performed many miracles, many things, and if they were to record every single thing that Jesus did, every miracle, every act that he did, there would not be a single book large enough to contain all of the things that he's done. Okay. So, verse 43, and he charged them straitly. In other words, he commanded them that no man should know it. In other words, they must not relate the account of this miracle. And there were reasons for this at the time. The least not being the furor which religious leaders would cause, but it is certain that such news like this could not be kept. But he just wanted to he said he commanded them that no man should know, because he knew it would cause more opposition and whatnot. But he also knew that it wasn't something that couldn't be contained either. And commanded that something should be given her to eat due to her illness, which actually killed her. She probably needed to eat something or what have you. So now we're on to chapter 6.